When a woman of quiet strength finally chooses herself, the transformation isn't loud. It's absolute. She's the one who's always observed more than she spoke, adapted more than she demanded, until the day adaptation became surrender. Now her patience becomes boundaries, her silence becomes truth, and her endurance becomes unstoppable power. At Sigma Sisterhood, we honor this metamorphosis, where women trade people-pleasing for unshakable standards, swap silent endurance for visible strength, and replace shrinking with sovereign rebirth. This isn't just empowerment. It's evolution engineered. Subscribe to discover what happens when good women decide they're done being convenient and start becoming unconquerable. Your awakening begins the moment you choose it. 1. The echo withdrawal. The power of strategic silence. When a self-contained woman reaches her breaking point, her first move isn't explosive, it's eerily quiet. This is the echo withdrawal, a deliberate retreat where her absence becomes louder than her presence ever was. Unlike dramatic exits or emotional confrontations, her disappearance is calculated. She doesn't announce her departure or justify her distance. She simply steps back, creating a void where she once overextended herself. Those around her, accustomed to her listening, her labor, her emotional labor, suddenly find themselves unbalanced. Conversations lack depth. Problems go unresolved. The unspoken harmony she maintained collapses because it was never real. It was her, smoothing edges and absorbing tensions without recognition. What makes this withdrawal terrifying and transformative is its precision. She isn't sulking or seeking attention, she's auditing. Her silence is a test. Who notices her absence? Who respects her boundaries? Who panics when they can no longer rely on her quiet support? She observes not with anger but with clarity, recording who scrambles to reel her back into old roles for their comfort, not her worth. And when she's seen enough, the withdrawal solidifies into permanence. Relationships that drained her fade without fanfare. Social circles that took her for granted crumble under the weight of their own dysfunction. Her retreat isn't passive, it's a reclamation. By refusing to fill spaces that diminished her, she forces those spaces to confront what they truly valued, her utility or her presence. The echo withdrawal isn't revenge, it's the ultimate act of self-respect. And when she finally walks away, she doesn't look back. She's already thriving elsewhere, in a silence that no longer echoes for others, but resonates for herself. 2. Empathy shutdown, the unbreakable boundary. When a self-reliant woman snaps, her greatest act of rebellion isn't anger, it's the deliberate withdrawal of her emotional labor. This is the empathy shutdown, a psychological pivot where she stops absorbing others' chaos and starts guarding her energy like sacred ground. Gone is the woman who softened blows, mediated conflicts, or soothed fragile egos. In her place stands someone unsettlingly impervious, not cruel, but clinically detached. Those accustomed to her emotional generosity experience whiplash when met with dispassionate logic instead of compassionate compromise. The shutdown isn't impulsive, it's survival. Years of being the emotional Swiss Army knife, used to fix moods, absorb venting, and cushion consequences, have left her depleted. Now she reroutes that energy inward. Where she once diffused tension, she now names it. That sounds like a personal problem. Where she once absorbed blame, she reflects accountability. Why is that my responsibility? The shift terrifies those who mistook her empathy for infinite supply. Suddenly, their unchecked demands hit a wall of unwavering boundaries. This isn't heartlessness, it's reclamation. By refusing to perform emotional labor for those who exploit it, she exposes dysfunctional systems that relied on her silence. Colleagues flounder without her peacemaking. Partners panic when she stops therapizing the relationship. The shutdown reveals a hard truth. Many mistook her capacity to care for an obligation to serve. But here's the revolution. Once her empathy switches off for you, it rarely reactivates. She's not withholding love. She's practicing discernment. The shutdown forces others to confront their own emotional incompetence while she redirects her energy to those who reciprocate. It's not an ending, but an evolution. The moment she trades being everyone's anchor for becoming her own priority. 4. The social declutter, the surgical removal of toxic relationships. When a self-possessed woman reaches her limit, she doesn't make announcements or issue warnings. She conducts a ruthless, systematic purge of her social circle with the precision of a master editor, cutting unnecessary words from a manuscript. This is the social declutter, a transformative process where she removes toxic relationships as cleanly as a surgeon excises malignant tissue, not out of anger, but from profound self-respect. The operation is silent, methodical, and absolutely irreversible. The process begins with an unflinching audit of every relationship in her life. She examines each connection through a lens of radical honesty, asking piercing questions. Does this person add value or extract it? Do they celebrate my growth or resent it? Are they present only when convenient for them? Energy vampires, emotional freeloaders, and passive-aggressive underminers are identified with clinical objectivity. Then, without drama or confrontation, she removes them, not with explosive fights, but through quiet disengagement. Phone calls go unreturned. Invitations cease. The door closes so smoothly that many don't realize they've been locked out until they're standing alone in the cold. What makes this declutter so terrifying and so powerful is its absolute finality. Unlike typical relationship conflicts, where reconciliation remains possible, her decision carries the weight of a Supreme Court ruling. She doesn't cut people off out of hatred, but from crystal clear recognition that their presence is incompatible with her future self. The woman who once tolerated disrespect now treats her time and emotional reserves like a billionaire guards her fortune, with fierce discernment. A single act of betrayal, a pattern of neglect, or even a consistently one-sided dynamic becomes grounds for permanent removal. The aftermath reveals uncomfortable but liberating truths. Many relationships she thought were essential turn out to have been mere habits, empty rituals maintained out of obligation or fear of loneliness. Without her constant emotional labor propping them up, these connections wither like unwatered plants. Meanwhile, the few remaining relationships, those built on mutual respect and genuine care, grow stronger and more nourishing than ever before. This isn't isolation, it's the ultimate act of intentional community building. By removing what drained her, she creates sacred space for connections that truly nourish her soul. Observers may mistake her actions as cold or abrupt, but those who understand recognize the deeper reality. She's not abandoning people, she's finally choosing herself. The social declutter becomes a masterclass in boundary setting, proving that sometimes the most powerful step forward isn't about gaining something new, but having the courage to release what was never worthy of her in the first place. 5. The identity eclipse. When her true self emerges unapologetically. The most profound transformation occurs when a self-contained woman stops performing the version of herself that others have come to expect. This identity eclipse isn't about changing who she is. It's about finally revealing who she's always been beneath layers of compromise and conditioning. Like the moon passing before the sun, the familiar facade fades, and what emerges leaves observers awestruck. For years, perhaps decades, she operated under an unspoken contract, dim her light to avoid intimidating others, soften her edges to make people comfortable, mute her opinions to keep the peace. But the moment she snaps, this contract burns to ashes. The woman who once made herself small now stands at full height, not because she's grown, but because she's stopped crouching. Colleagues who knew her as accommodating meet a steel-spined professional who says no without apology. Friends accustomed to her flexibility encounter someone with non-negotiable standards. Family members used to her compliance face a woman who prioritizes selfhood over tradition. What makes this eclipse so unsettling is its irreversibility. Like daylight after a solar eclipse, nothing looks the same once witnessed. Her humor sharpens from self-deprecating to brilliantly observational. Her style evolves from blending in to standing out. Even her voice changes, not in pitch, but in power, as she stops upward inflecting statements into questions. Every revealed layer exposes how much energy she once spent contorting herself to fit spaces that never deserved her. The metamorphosis terrifies those invested in her old persona. Romantic partners who wanted a caretaker find themselves with an equal. Bosses who relied on her silence meet articulate challenge. But for those who truly value her, the eclipse is breathtaking. They're finally meeting the woman they always sensed existed beneath the surface. This isn't rebellion, it's homecoming. With each discarded expectation, she discovers facets of herself long suppressed. Creative passions she abandoned to seem practical, spiritual yearnings she muted to appear rational, sexual energy she policed to avoid judgment. The eclipse doesn't create these qualities, it simply stops hiding them. 6. The System Rewire. Architecting a life beyond societal scripts. When a self-contained woman reaches her breaking point, she doesn't just walk away, she dismantles and rebuilds the entire framework of her existence. This system rewire represents her most radical transformation. The moment she stops following inherited life scripts and begins consciously designing her own operating system. For years, she unconsciously complied with societal blueprints, climbing corporate ladders that left her empty, following relationship timelines that demanded soul-deep compromises, adhering to productivity cults that equated busyness with worth. The awakening comes when she recognizes these structures weren't designed for women like her to thrive, but to keep her predictably contained. The rewiring begins with quiet but seismic shifts in perspective. She starts interrogating fundamental assumptions. Why must success follow a linear path? Who decided emotional labor was her birthright? What if selfishness is just the system's term for self-preservation? Then comes the revolution, not with fanfare, but with irreversible actions. The corporate soldier negotiates her salary like a Fortune 500 CEO or walks away entirely. The perennial peacekeeper transforms her calendar from public property to sacred space. The serial accommodator stops auditioning for roles she never wanted. Each act of defiance serves as both liberation and revelation, exposing how many shoulds were never hers to carry, but were imposed by a culture invested in her compliance. What makes this transformation so dangerous to the status quo is its viral potential. When one woman stops playing the game, it forces others to examine why they're still at the table. Colleagues watch slack-jawed as she treats weekends as non-negotiable recovery periods, replaces reflexive apologies with "thank you for your patience," and demonstrates that professional respect isn't earned through exhaustion. Her personal life undergoes equal upheaval. Dating evolves from performance to mutual discernment. Friendships require energy reciprocity, and family interactions transform as she sets boundaries with the quiet certainty of someone who knows her worth isn't up for debate. This rewiring doesn't just change her circumstances, it alters her very consciousness. She develops what can only be called architect's vision, the ability to see through societal constructs to their load-bearing lies. The 9-to-5 grind, the relationship escalator, the arbitrary timelines for life milestones, all revealed as optional frameworks, not divine decrees. In this rebirth, she doesn't just think outside the box. She realizes the box was an illusion all along, designed to keep her safely contained rather than fully alive. The system rewire proves the most dangerous woman isn't the one who breaks rules, but the one who realizes she was never obligated to follow them. 7. Precision justice, the art of calculated consequences. When a self-contained woman delivers retribution, it arrives not as an emotional outburst, but as a masterclass in strategic response, what we call precision justice. This is where her years of quiet observation transform into devastatingly accurate consequences, each tailored to fit the offense with mathematical perfection. Unlike reactive rage, her approach is chillingly methodical. She allows transgressors to hang themselves with the very ropes they thought were binding her. The manipulative coworker finds his stolen credit exposed through a perfectly timed email forward. The toxic friend is severed not with drama but through irreversible distancing that leaves no room for gaslighting. The dishonest partner realizes too late that she documented every inconsistency with forensic patience. What makes this justice so terrifying is its elegant proportionality. She doesn't escalate. She simply removes herself as the buffer between people and their natural consequences. Her retaliation often mirrors the offense in ways that force self-confrontation. Energy vampires starve when she stops feeding them. Credit thieves flounder when her contributions become unmistakable, and emotional manipulators find themselves trapped in their own webs. This isn't petty vengeance. It's karmic realignment executed with the precision of a chess grandmaster sacrificing pawns to checkmate a king. The ultimate power lies in her detachment. By the time offenders recognize the reckoning, she's already moved on, having expended less energy on their downfall than they wasted trying to prevent it. In this flawless execution, she proves the most dangerous woman isn't the one who threatens, but the one who demonstrates, without fanfare, that she was never truly vulnerable to begin with. 8. The creative inferno. When suppressed energy becomes unstoppable momentum. When a self-contained woman finally unleashes her pent-up potential, the result is nothing short of a creative inferno, an unstoppable blaze of productivity and purpose that consumes everything inauthentic in its path. This isn't just a career shift or new hobby. It's the volcanic eruption of decades of stifled creativity, where every drop of energy once wasted on people-pleasing now fuels her most audacious visions. The corporate drone who secretly wrote poetry at night launches a viral newsletter. The exhausted mother who buried her artistic dreams starts selling paintings that crack open hearts. The perpetual assistant builds an empire from skills she once gave away freely. This creative surge moves with terrifying velocity, as if making up for lost time. Rejection becomes data, criticism transforms into refining fire, and past injustices ignite a generative rage that propels her forward. What makes this inferno so revolutionary is its alchemical nature. Skills from seemingly unrelated life chapters suddenly converge. Her authenticity becomes her competitive edge, and the very traits others dismissed as too intense or unrealistic become her superpowers. As she owns her creative authority, it creates permission slips for others to do the same. Her business employs women tired of glass ceilings. Her art articulates feelings others couldn't name. Her failures become public experiments in courage. This isn't merely output. It's the reclamation of a voice she was told to quiet, a vision she was conditioned to doubt, and a creative right she was convinced she never deserved. The creative inferno doesn't just light a candle. It sets ablaze every limiting belief, every «who do you think you are?» Зрение, пока все, что осталось, это яркая, неоспоримая истина. Она всегда была предназначена для того, чтобы гореть так ярко. 9. The truth reckoning. When silence gives way to uncompromising clarity. When a self-contained woman finally speaks her truth, it lands with the precision of a lightning strike, illuminating everything in its path. This truth reckoning isn't about emotional outbursts. It's the culmination of years of careful observation distilled into statements so surgically accurate they rewrite entire relationships. The friend who only reached out in moments of need, the partner who weaponized vulnerability, the colleague who claimed credit for her ideas, all now face the uncomfortable mirror of her unfiltered awareness. She cites dates, repeats forgotten promises verbatim, and highlights contradictions with the calm certainty of someone presenting irrefutable evidence. What terrifies isn't anger, but her utter lack of it. Just cold, hard facts delivered with devastating neutrality. This reckoning transforms her entire existence. Texts go unedited, uncomfortable truths flow unvarnished, and performative politeness dies where it stands. The woman who once agonized over being too much now understands she was never the problem. Their inability to handle her authenticity was. Professional dynamics shift as she names biases without apology. Toxic relationships crumble under the weight of their own exposed patterns, while healthy bonds deepen in the newfound honesty. Every spoken truth becomes a declaration of sovereignty. No more rehearsing conversations, no more swallowing words to comfort fragile egos. The truth reckoning doesn't seek to convince, it simply announces, with quiet finality, exactly who she is and what she will no longer tolerate. In breaking her silence, she discovers the weight she'd been carrying wasn't hers to bear, and the freedom of that realization propels her into a life where only those worthy of her truth get to stay. 10. The sovereignty shift. When she claims absolute authority over her life. The ultimate transformation occurs when a self-contained woman stops negotiating her existence, what we call the sovereignty shift. This isn't merely confidence or independence, but the full embodiment of her innate authority over every aspect of being. She becomes the architect of her reality, treating her time like national borders to be guarded, her energy as sacred currency, and her presence as a privilege rather than a given. The woman who once contorted herself to fit spaces now designs environments worthy of her essence. Careers transform as she sets non-negotiable terms rather than pleading for basic respect. Relationships either elevate to meet her standards or become irrelevant, and even family dynamics shift as she rewrites generational scripts in real time. This shift manifests not through declarations, but through silent, seismic changes in how she moves through the world. Opportunities find her because she stopped chasing what wasn't meant for her. Toxic people self-select out because they can no longer extract what they need. And unfinished dreams suddenly manifest as she stops doubting their validity. The sovereignty shift creates a gravitational pull. Companies counteroffer when she resigns, clients respect her boundaries without question, and connections either deepen into mutual growth or dissolve without fanfare. What makes this transformation irreversible is its foundation in absolute self-possession. She no longer seeks permission to exist fully, and in that unshakable certainty, the world has no choice but to rearrange itself around her truth. This isn't empowerment. It's the realization that she was always the authority she'd been waiting for. When a self-contained woman reaches her breaking point, she doesn't collapse. She sheds. The echo withdrawal, empathy shutdown, and social declutter aren't signs of damage but the necessary demolition before reconstruction. This metamorphosis reveals the ultimate truth. Her power was never in endurance, but in deliberate choice. The choice to stop contorting, to rewrite life's scripts in her own hand, and to treat her energy as sacred rather than communal property. What emerges isn't just stronger, but different. A woman whose boundaries are ironclad, whose intuition is sovereign, and whose presence is no longer negotiable. Relationships transform or dissolve, careers recalibrate, and even ordinary interactions shift. Not because she demands change, but because her very being commands it. This isn't revenge against the world, it's fidelity to herself. That moment of snapping was never destruction. It was the first tremor of her becoming. Now, fully awake, she moves with the terrifying clarity of someone who knows. The most dangerous woman isn't the one who fights the system, but the one who realizes she was never part of it to begin with. Subscribe to Sigma Sisterhood, where women don't just heal, but redefine.